Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the Eve Universe Show. And today I am joined by the one, the only, the frigate menace himself, the former CSM, Yintan. How you doing, Yintan? Oh, hold on. Now go. I caught it quickly this time.
Yeah, well, it's lovely to be on. Thank you so much for inviting me around, Ashtarothi. It's been far too long since I've really sat down and had a decent chat with you. We used to do this all the time. For those of you who weren't here back in the early days of Ashtarothi's Twitch channel, we used to do a series of lore videos before the stuff that he has now put together himself, which is much better and much more accurate. And it's been a joy to watch him kind of develop on from our collaboration there.
You did a great job making it look really good, though, and whatever secret sauce you got, your audience is obviously very widespread, because I still have people come to me referencing that, oh, you're the guy from the Yintan videos. Like that happens. I mean, they don't say Yintan, usually they say Jin'taan, but you know, basically that.
It's all fine. Apparently my video is frozen on the stream, by the way.
Oh, hold on.
Posing people.
There we go. Fixed. Thanks.
Thank you, stream.
No, I just wanted him to be, looking, thoughtful forever. Sorry, go on.
But anyway, it's been a while since I've been here, but most of that's because I've been kind of more of a casual player these days. I no longer kind of put the 40 to 60 hours a week into EVE Online like I used to back when I was a university student, back when I was in my apprenticeship. Unfortunately, real life's caught up with me a little bit, and I've had to put some of that energy into better places.
Yeah, so just in case people might not be aware, Yintan is kind of what I've referred to in the past as like the first true child of EVE. Grew up with EVE as his primary game from when? You were 12, right?
I kind of like played around with it a little bit when I was 12. 13 was when I started seriously playing. And I didn't have a debit card or a credit card or any bank account at the time. So I had to chain trial accounts for a year, or I would contract my stuff from one trial account to another trial account and retrain up all the skills to begin with, which I'm sure is entirely against the EULA.
I'm glad that you admitted that now that you're off of the CSM. But so speaking of the CSM, by the time you were 18, though, you had already built up enough of a movement behind you that CCP, I mean, more or less changed the rules for you to be able to run for the CSM. Right? I have that correct, right?
I don't think it was kind of ordained in that way. I don't think CCP really knew who I was in that regard before I got on the CSM. I mean, I'd done a little bit of work around the AT scene, but I don't think I'd ever told them I was 17 during that kind of period. But yeah, I was the youngest ever CSM for a time until Bogmon, I believe, actually held that record for a time. I'm not sure who the youngest would be these days. But yeah, EVE has been a really core part of my life, and even during the down times, the down periods, I'm still playing it every weekend. I'm currently with Foxholders. I don't really log on to Tranquility that much right now, but every weekend you'll find me on Sissy, but the test server, for people who aren't aware, doing scrims, practicing for the Anger Games, which will be taking place in May. And that's been great fun.
I'm glad to hear you getting involved again, because so the thing that always I found distressing was that after the CSM, like there's this CSM curse, right? That when somebody gets off the CSM, they burn out of EVE. Like they're super enthusiastic, they get on the CSM, at the end of the term, they're out of the game. And you kind of became the poster boy for that. The best example of that. This kid that grew up with EVE, like had it through his entire system, got elected to CSM based on his passion, and then basically immediately after wasn't very happy.
Yeah, I actually spent 3 years on the CSM. It wasn't just one term, so
That's
I got
true.
to kind of experience a whole arc there of being really, really hopeful during year 1, seeing in year 2 that things just really didn't work, and then in year 3 finally burning out, running out of patience with it, and having quite the disagreement and the tumultuous end to that term. Although I can't really talk about that until my NDA expires, unfortunately.
Fair enough. But yet, here you are back, continuing to get back into it, and now you're saying that you've gotten back for the tournament scene.
I'm mostly back for the community, if I'm honest. Like the tournament is how I stay connected with the actual game, even though I don't feel like Tranquility is a place that has a room for the playstyle that I really enjoy anymore. Or at least it's not like as easy to access with the amount of time that I have. And I'm always very cognizant of the fact that one, I associate as being the best times of EVE Online with the times where I had the most ability to dedicate time to it. So I'm always aware that some part of that is it taints my view of the current state of the game. It makes it hard to make those more, hardcore proclamations that are like, oh, the game is broken, when it's like, maybe I'm just not engaging with it on the right level now. But no, it is good. I feel like you can find your way to engage with EVE anyway, and the people are what make this game great. There are so many interesting people in the game that have such unique perspectives on the world. I wouldn't have met so many people in my life if it wasn't for this game, and I continue to stay in it for that reason.
Absolutely true, and an excellent answer. So, but it does make me wonder, what are your thoughts about the latest incarnation of the Abyssal Proving Conduits, right? If you like the tournament type stuff and you need content without as much free time, have you played around with the Abyssal Proving Conduits at all?
Yeah, I've played in a couple of the Proving Grounds before. Those are enjoyable, but they tend to be kind of like, I don't know, something about them just didn't feel right for me, and also it took a lot of effort to sit down and buy a bunch of fits for that and really play it for a couple of hours, whereas the tournament stuff, you're doing it with larger teams and you can get more, there's a lot more play to it that's based around interacting with other people and making decisions. It's a lot less of the rock, paper, scissors of trying to find the right fit and then applying the right fit in the right way, which is what I feel a lot of these Proving Grounds kind of descend into. Just naturally because of how limited they have to be in order to prevent cheesing. I hope that someday we'll actually get like AT style conduits. Once you get that, that's when I think I would start playing on Tranquility again. Like if I could do the equivalent of play a scrim but on Tranquility, there'd be a lot more dead battleships on my Z kill, I can tell you that.
Well, haven't they done like 3v3s at least and other things like that?
Yeah, the problem was always that they struggled to get enough population, so you couldn't really queue up repeatedly.
Right.
And this is something that CCP Fozzy and a couple of the other developers have actually talked quite consistently about, is that they can't really time gate them because they can only be activated and deactivated on downtimes, from what I understand. And because of that, you can't say, okay, at 2000 everyone's going to be able to queue and it's going to be like a 2 to 3 hour slot, and that way you can kind of funnel all the people to be active at a certain point.
Right.
So you can't really have open entry, which means it has to be moderated. It has to be kind of like a top-down production of a tournament. You can't just give people the equivalent of ranked matchmaking for EVE Online.
Right.
Just in the system.
Yeah.
One day, I would like to see it. And you know what? I think if I talked to myself in CSM 11 and I discussed the possibility of EVE Online ranked matchmaking, I'd tell you that was a disgusting perversion of what EVE is. I've definitely softened my position over the years on the nature of EVE Online and what makes it such a great game. Because I used to think very strongly that the non-consensual PvP and the kind of emergent PvP scene were critical to what made EVE. And I don't know, I've seen so much of that go away, and I haven't seen the core appeal of EVE leave yet.
Right.
Which, I'd love to see it all come back. Please don't get me wrong there, guys. I'm not kind of advocating for it, but I think there's room for more playstyles in EVE Online than have been kind of truly explored by CCP in terms of facilitation. and I'm interested to see where they go in that regard in future.
I find that the player base often thinks about things as like a zero-sum game, right? As if CCP worked on the PVE, that somehow the PvP would be worse, right? But it's still there. And all you do is get people that have had better experiences, and maybe even more people, and maybe even better trained people. Like Eve has room to grow by embracing different kinds of players, I think.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think EVE Online is developing a new target audience. We've kind of talked privately a lot about this in the past, where I feel like it's developing a new target audience in a destructive way, but it could be a constructive kind of relationship. You know, like I talked to a whole breed of gamer that was incredibly interested in EVE Online when EVE Echoes launched.
Right.
And it was kind of promising to be like this monetization free kind of EVE on mobile, like pure experience. It moved away from that, unfortunately, quite rapidly, and those players disappeared. But
I'm not sure how people expect a monetization-free video game. That's
not monetization free, but like monetization light. They wanted it to be like purely subscription based, basically. Like
yeah. No, it's the opposite of that.
Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But you know, and it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that there were people who held the same kind of like core values of thinking that player-driven experiences are what makes the EVE Online IP special. That's fundamentally it. Like I think now. It's the fact that the story is what you do in the community and what you do in this virtual world. It's not what you do to some NPC or you do to versus some challenge. You know, the challenges only exist that you set yourself, really.
Well, I would argue that the real problem there is that the fact that you do something to that NPC doesn't mean anything for the EVE universe. If you could fix that, then it would be good for you to be able to interact with the NPCs in that way, right? Because you said your impact on the community and the impact on the universe. If you could,
and I think
like faction warfare, for example.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. That's a very good point, honestly, Ashi. And as to what's being said in the chat, yeah, I think that's correct.
What is being said on the chat? That's not being saved in the.
One target audience doesn't mean to exclude another target audience.
Right.
And that's absolutely correct. But I think the problem is, and this is the problem that I always raised when I was on the CSM, is that what you need to be able to do to kind of like facilitate the PvP community is relatively low effort. It doesn't need to be big changes to high scale mechanics all the time. It can be things like this battleship buff, which is a relatively low intensity change. And that's the thing that people are saying, like that's the only positive thing that people keep bringing up in all these recent threads about criticism. And that probably took them a week of dev time max, and that's only if you just sat around and really deliberated those changes for a good while. I think that's kind of the issue, is that aspect of the game, the actual spaceships, people getting new things to fly around in space and shoot each other with, and new places to explore and do things in. That's what people aren't seeing, and what people think the energy is going into monetization instead of. And I don't think that's correct, because normally the monetization stuff tends to be handled by the marketing team from my time in the CSM. So, it's probable that the game design people didn't even know that this pack was coming out until they saw it along with the rest of us, or at least, maybe a day before.
You're talking about the Retriever pack?
Yeah, the Retriever pack.
I did want to. That was something I was already going to segue into, so I'm glad that you brought it up. So first of all, like at high level, what is your feelings about the selling of the Retriever, or other things made by players?
Yeah, I don't like it, and it's because it's a slippery slope. That is the purest part of it, and we've seen where CCP has gone with slippery slopes in the past. The kind of key point of that for me being the skill trading system. We went from skill trading is purely going to be player to player, and we're just taking a fee to facilitate that, to actually we're going to do this one little thing. And I was on the CSM where we kind of we agreed to bat for CCP on this. They came to us with a proposal of why it was important. why it was necessary, and why there wasn't a way around it. And we were like, okay, this is a crossing of the line that we think is a fine step without going any further. I don't know, are they still in the game, like the alpha and little 30 one day at a time
alpha daily injectors?
Yeah, those things.
Yeah,
they're there. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that was kind of like the first step towards CCP directly selling SP.
Correct.
Then we had the login rewards. I knew there were a couple of other things kind of before that where they tried to use SP as a kind of like, I don't know, a pseudo reward like that.
Right. Once skill injectors established that unallocated SP was a norm,
yeah,
they started increasingly experimenting with giving away SP. Yeah,
and then eventually with that descended into them selling SP directly to players.
Correct.
Through various means. And we heard some kind of like rumblings, well, maybe they'll turn it back, but that amounted to nothing. CCP is just directly selling SP now. I don't think anyone can make any bones about that, right? They straight up lied to us in terms of what they originally said they were going to do and what they ended up doing in terms of the depth of monetization of the game. And I don't think people have enough, well, at least I think a significant portion of the community, or a very vocal portion of the community perhaps, doesn't have enough faith in CCP that they won't do the same thing with this. Because individually this pack is not terrible for the game. It's not going to crash the economy. It's not going to push people out of having, profit on their retriever sales. But what it is going to do is it is going to open the door to that eventually happening in the future. And
right. It establishes the precedent. It crosses the line in a soft way. It allows them to tiptoe across the line instead of step over it.
And I was on the CSM when there was another exception made to this rule, and this was around giving away fitted frigates in starter packs.
Right.
And this was something that we deliberated about quite heavily with CCP at the time. And they're kind of, I think I can share this because we did talk about them publicly about this, was that basically they found that the point where you had to start making your own fit was the point where there was the biggest drop off in player retention. Like of all the little steps,
right,
that was the step where most people fell off. So they thought, okay, let's experiment. Let's give them a pre-fit ship. Let's see if that smooths out that curve at all. Let's see how far we can get in kind of bridging that gap. And we were like, okay, it's for the new players. It's good. And that seems to be the way that they always get you, unfortunately. And I think we're just worried about that.
So I want to, there's a lot to unpack there. Good stuff too. I want to devil's advocate. I want to debate this point with you a little bit. Because I know that you're one of the big advocates against the idea of selling SP. And you mentioned the slippery slope argument thing. First of all, what bothers me about EVE Online players saying slippery slope is that slippery slope is a fallacy. So bringing that up in a debate doesn't support your argument very well, right? Like, I get what we're saying. Like, it's, boiling the frog is a much like more like established way of like thinking of that sort of idea, right? Because it's like small incremental steps that nobody actually notices.
It's setting the delta. It's setting the trend towards more monetization.
Overton window and all that stuff. Every time somebody says slippery slope, I'm just like, that's anyway. But I also disagree that this is like SP, and I also disagree that it's necessarily a problem of what they did with SP, and I'll tell you why. So first and foremost, my position is predicated on the belief that after 10 plus years of the game required new and different catch-up mechanics, or at least mechanics to progression, more rapid progression mechanics for people who capitalize on it in various different ways. Because the thing is that in the old days, it took you a long time to train, but that was okay because you were the ones that everybody was training. There was no what you are now to these new people back when you were training. And so to compensate for that, there needs to be ways for them to be able to acquire things if they're active in a way that maybe you weren't able to before. Okay, so just that assumption.
So the distinction of SP versus SP as a resource versus SP as a time sink, basically,
Right.
or a time
SP.
barrier, or a time
You have to accumulate
yeah.
SP, right? And then, but whether like it used to be that you had to only accumulate it in that fixed rate, and over time they made it so that if you were active, you know, you did your login rewards. If you were doing, you know, doing your daily, you know, the events. If you did your, you know, skills for kills or whatever, like the more you did it, the more you could get, you know, carve off of that. And then on top of that, there was always the skill injectors thing. But here's the thing about that. When they made the skill injectors, the idea is that like somehow there would be something problematic with CCP selling skill points directly. And so the counteract to that would be that the players themselves would be the ones doing it. But what we saw come from that was the rise of the skill farm. And that has caused so many problems within this game, with the way that people play the game, with the way that power is maintained or controlled within this game and accumulated, the way that the CSM voting process goes. All of these things are affected by the fact that skill farms make it so that it is either extremely cheap or literally profitable to have a ton of accounts. And so I don't think that they started selling skill points because it was a slippery slope. It's because those skill farms needed competition to make it no longer profitable for them to be able to do what they were doing, which was damaging the game. If it was up to me, I would say that the selling, us being involved in it was the mistake. If they're going to have catch-up mechanics, maybe it should all be sold by CCP. And it's the fact that other people, players, can subsidize their accounts that has actually affected this game, because needing to do that, needing to pay for your account one way or another, is the buy-in that it takes for people to take their account seriously.
Yeah, you know, that's actually that's a good point. That is a very good point. I do admit to that. I think the problem there, though, is that I feel like the way it's been being done now is very non-predatory. I like kind of it as an additional thing, not something that people feel forced to buy. Yeah, I do agree that skill farms are a problem. I can't disagree with that. They are fundamentally bad. I rallied against them during my time on the CSM, and skill trading is something that kind of that basically brought that into existence. Although alt farms have always existed, I expect this next election is going to be absolutely awful with regard to that. But I feel it's important that the economy is run as much by the players as possible, because otherwise there is more incentive for CCP to do things that would go against the incentive of the player base. And I feel like CCP directly, as in, so the obvious example here is, you know, if you create a grind that people have to go through, and then you directly give them the way to bypass that grind, you are actually incentivized to make the grind, so the core gameplay of your game, worse, in order to make people want to pay the money. And that's, you know, it's a negative cycle that all corporations are kind of susceptible to, because hey, shareholder capitalism, isn't it great? And we kind of have to be cognizant of that.
Right. Yeah. So
and I feel like CCP selling SP will eventually lead to that. I don't think it's happened yet, but I feel like it will happen in the future at some point. I don't think they would have removed. So let's put it this way. I don't think CCP would have removed learning skills if they were still in the game, if they'd have been selling SP directly.
No. They would have They would have done what Echoes did. Which is in Echoes, there's a one-time. So there are learning skills in Echoes, basically, but the way that you acquire them is by buying the chips that give you them. So it's a one-time purchase. So, you know, you can pay Omega and that gives you more skill points per month or whatever. But if you get these chips, that just increases your skill training from that point on. It's a one-time thing of like $20 or something. Like that, that absolutely would have been the way they did it. Why not?
Yeah, now that's kind of always been my concern with CCP selling it directly.
Right.
Whereas by CCP enabling SP trading, I felt like that kept it in the hands of the players, that kept it out of being, it kept it a neutral resource as far as CCP was concerned.
See, and with this retriever thing, it's got me thinking the opposite though, like, because we never had the capability of fiddling with skill points. That was always in the domain of CCP, and they always sold skill points because
that's not entirely true, because we have the character bazaar. So SP was always traded.
Right, the generation of
this was a refinement of
the generation.
No, because I used to sell characters.
Oh, I guess you're right. That's a good point. But my point is that so when we said that every SP was trained by a player, what we really said was every SP was earned by paying CCP for access to the game for a month, right? Yeah. So they were still selling SP even then for cash because it was part of the package of your monthly sub. So I would argue that I would rather give that to CCP and let them sell skill points at whatever rates they want to feel like that's worth doing, if they stay out of the domain of things that players are supposed to be in control of, like retrievers.
Yeah, I
think that's like the difference.
My stance has softened. I don't think that it's terrible now. I'm happy for them to do it, and I don't.
Right, I'm trying to draw a distinction. I'm trying to say that the retriever's worse.
Yes,
because it's a worse threshold to cross. Because it's really actually taking something from the players.
It is taking away gameplay. That is the key. That was my key point on Twitter when I was kind of talking about this initially. This is gameplay destructive. It's gameplay negative.
Right.
Monetization from CCP.
And what bothers me is that it goes back to what you were just saying, which is that the thing that makes people fall off is the fitting. Well, has anybody ever considered the fact that CCP teaches you to fly and shoot and all that stuff, but they're teaching you a fitting is, here's a thing, fit it. And that's it. And then they move on. Like, the only reason why you know about power grid or CPU is because the alert comes up if it pops over, and that's new, right? Like, maybe if the game actually helped people learn how to fit, that wouldn't be the blocker that it is. And you could actually just give somebody Plex and they'd be able to do what they want with it. And you wouldn't have to rely on giving them a fit ship to compensate for the fact that you haven't taught them the gosh darn game. That's what bothers. Academy videos are a thing. Who finds them? How many of those people find them in the time that it takes to do it? Why doesn't the game point you to that?
And why did they do one shot of them and then never touch it again?
No. The new Academy videos are now in the game. They're updating quite a bit. Yeah. The new Academy thing that CCP Aurora is doing is awesome. But
that's brilliant.
But you didn't know about it, and that's my point.
Yeah, community fittings was something I had to push for when I was on the CSM.
And they still don't point those out either.
They haven't put them out?
No, they don't point them out. It's still, they're like, a new player, there's nothing there's no, why would a new player even think to do the series of actions that it would take to pull up the community fittings area?
Yeah, it's just, the UI of EVE is a cluster shit, and they seem really unwilling to change any of it. Like, even getting the default overview changed slightly was such a pain in the ass. It took like literal years of campaigning from multiple members of the community to make a very basic change happen there. And I don't know why that is. Is it just like something where it's out of their range of view because they're so experienced? Or is it, I don't understand how their own like testing doesn't catch stuff like this.
Well, I sometimes wonder if it's the opposite of that. I wonder if it's like, and they've gotten better at it recently, but it's also because they've hired people specifically to help fix this problem. But like, the people that work on the game now, by and large, are not the people that made the game. So those old systems are so archaic. And the other thing is that the people who made the game learned how to code to make the game. So a lot of those old systems aren't, let's say they're not coded to best practices. So, you know, you could, let's say you're a developer and there's a ticket and you could estimate it at being 2 hours. But if it touches any kind of old system, then you could discover that ticket could explode into 40 plus hours, depending on what thing you cut accidentally by touching the wrong thing, because on the outside it looked like the risk on every single ticket that touches any of the old systems has to be extreme.
Yeah, I from experience working inside the CSM, there are definitely times where it's like that, but there's also times where it's like, oh yeah, we just never thought to try that. We'll do it now. And it's like, they literally do it in the weekend and it's shipped in the next launch, and you're like,
right.
Why did this take 5 years?
I see that
like the faction warfare thing, where it's like, I don't remember what the specific issue was, but it basically made people shoot faction warfare people in high sec constantly, and that getting fixed took next to no time. And I don't know if it actually had that huge of an impact, but it's like a pressure point that people always commented on.
Yeah, and I guess that's my point, is that, like, especially from the outside, it's like, for those people in the code, it is risk, because you don't necessarily know how complex it is, that particular thing is underneath the hood. But from an outsider's point of view, it feels like you're walking through a hedge maze blindfolded, right? Because you never know what here or there is, let alone how to get there. What might seem incredibly easy for us is impossible for them, and what seems like a very complex maneuver to us is literally trivial for them to pull off, just because of the way that things are. I also want to point out, or bring up, ISD Thalic points out that the best practices in 2003 are often not the best practices in 2022, which is very, very true. I was being a little bit jokingly glib about them learning how to code at that time, but that is part of the whole thing, is that, a lot of things has changed, game design and the way that we structure code, in particular since 2003. We've gotten a lot better at such things.
Yeah, I mean, working on Eve is a monumental task, but people don't appreciate that, I don't think. And also, the teams are a lot smaller than you think they really are. Like, it's not. I don't know. Maybe I got the incorrect impression when I was on the CSM, but these teams are like 5-6 people big, and you don't have any teams that are allocated to specific points of gameplay permanently. They're always flitting around. They're doing a release or a feature that touches on this area of the game and that area of the game and that area of the game, and one guy's worked on that thing for a little bit, so he's going to handle that integration, and what that guy over there, he's done this little bit before, so that's going to piece together. And Fuzzy, I'm sorry, you're going to have to figure that shit out. That's sort of the way it goes in CCP, and it causes them a lot of headaches, because Eve is such a vast game that you can't just have people dedicated to owning individual features.
Right. And Thalic does point out that a team of more than 10 people is generally slower than a team of less than 10 people when it comes to development.
Sorry, yeah.
And that is absolutely true.
Though, I think people see the taglines of how much money CCP is worth and how many people play this game, and they assume there's 300 people in CCP, and up to 200 of them are coders or something. And it's not like that, I don't think.
Right.
They've
and
they've
even
got
then,
a lot of other ancillary employees.
Even then, there's also resources that are shared, right? So there could be teams that don't have a coder, that if they actually need a software done, they need to wait for one of the other the coders to be able to be available to cycle through. There's a lot of things that just don't get done because there's nobody to touch it. I remember updates to the API was really challenging, not because we didn't want it to be done, and not because even CCP didn't want it to be done. It was just that there was nobody to pick up that ticket to make it happen.
Yeah, and equally, there's times like this are insane. There is so much turbulence in the community right now, and it's nice kind of being far enough away from it that I don't feel quite as sucked in by the emotional intensity of the moment anymore.
I wanted to highlight that, actually, because last time I talked to you, privately, when we first started talking about interviewing, you were not this way. You were rather on the angry side of the fence.
I mean, I still am. I still don't. I don't want to, kind of be as negative as I probably was in that kind of personal discussion with you.
Fair enough.
And I wouldn't have been like that on the stream anyway. But,
fair enough.
The game is not in the best place it's been. The game has been a lot healthier than it is right now, and I do worry for it. But I've kind of accepted that I can't sit here and be responsible for every single CCP fuck up. You know, it's not mentally healthy to tie yourself that much to a product that a multi-million-pound corporation makes. It's not good for you.
Well, I'll just ignore that advice for a little bit.
Yeah, I understand, but
I'm just kidding. So I did want to know a little bit of your thoughts about some of the more controversial changes recently, like the industry and mining changes. You know, you've had a lot of opinions on a lot of different things. I did catch you mining once, but you said that you weren't really that big of a miner. But do you have any thoughts on that whole?
Yeah, I absolutely do. So obviously the old kind of system of moon mining and all that sort of thing, and in general just how mining was set up was kind of busted, especially with skill farms. For those who aren't aware, like back in 2018 to 2019, I ran a farm of 21 orcas and a lot of nice mines all across 0.5 high sec. And I would just run up to a belt and I would just strip it clean. I would do it in 3 cycles, so I'd do 1 before I went to work. I'd come home and I'd do 1 at lunch and I'd do 1 before I went to bed. And that would be somewhere in the region of 40 to 50 bill a week. And that was absolutely insane. And that wasn't sustainable for the economy. And I think pretty much everyone knew that something had to go. I don't really understand how it changed, because I kind of quit playing the game at that level before the industry changes really kicked in. But what I generally see is just a lot of anger about the fact that there isn't a huge amount of new gameplay kind of introduced in it. It just seems like there's more faff to get to the thing that people wanted to do, which is to shoot rocks with lasers and make money come out of them. And I don't really understand why CCP didn't take this as an opportunity to maybe rework the mining gameplay more and make it, at least put the option in there for more interactability and more interesting play styles for industry, to make it less of a purely passive sort of thing.
Right.
There are people out there who love PI. I'm sure there's a way to make active mining fun for some people.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was really sorry.
For example, the races, for example, recently, those seem like really good fun.
Oh yeah, mining blitz and stuff.
Yeah.
Those are pretty fun. We enjoy them every time they come out. Although technically speaking, that's a pretty old feature. I mean, Resource Wars is what, 2016 originally?
Resource Wars would have been great if they'd have actually put any good fucking rewards to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's literally what these are.
I never understand why they gave it a reward that cost you money to use.
That's what this, no, but that's literally what these are.
I know.
All they did was bring back Resource Wars and made it so the skins aren't volatile. That's it. That's what they and they bring it back for a limited time. But
I really liked that gameplay when it came out. I was kind of weirded out by the fact that they just let it die rather than experiment with it in any way.
Right. Well, at least they brought it back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's weird. Like, ideas like that are circular in EVE. Like, you hear about them, they go away, and then they come back like 10 years later. Like, you know, tracking Titans went from something that players created to something that had to be nerfed out of existence to something that CCP created to something they nerfed out of existence again. You know, the cycle of EVE gameplay is a loop. It's, you know, it's an Ouroboros, really.
Well, yeah, it's the cycle of rage, right? Like when you have it, when you're on one side, then everybody over here starts bitching, so then you start shifting in that direction, and then you cross the threshold, and now there's too many people on this side bitching. You should go the other way again. Back round and round we go.
Also, yeah, it's great to see CCP Aurora finally being a game designer. She's done great work for the tournament community, and I think General Stargazer just got hired as CCP Zalus. It's nice to see so much hiring coming from the community again from CCP. That's one of the most positive signs that I've really seen. The game's always been best when it's taken in an influx of people who kind of can help revitalize the community and you know, give the sorts of indications that CCP is willing to support them. And I hope that those guys have a hell of a bridge to climb in kind of bringing back a lot of the old stuffy veterans and making us think that CCP is trustworthy again. But if there's people who can do them, CCP seems to be hiring them.
It's true. Although I'm not sure
Swift
how
as
many
well,
of the
yeah.
old stuffy people see. No, I'm just kidding. They also, there's CCP Swift, CCP Convict, and yesterday, I think it was, Satonia said that he's joining the team in like 2 weeks.
Oh, is that public now?
He said it on a stream. I hummed and hawed about it until I was given a clip of him actually saying it. So he said, I went and watched it. I was sussed about the April 1st thing too, but he got asked whether or not he was going to be on the run for the CSM again. And he was like, oh, well, I didn't know if I was supposed to announce it or how I wanted to announce it, but I guess I might as well say it. I'm going to be joining the company in a couple of weeks. I just signed the paperwork. And then a little bit later, he said, and it was funny because it's April 1st. So I was going to write I'm quitting the CSM and release it on that day. So that way everybody thinks that it's an April Fool's joke, but now I'm saying it now. So like, it didn't feel like he was setting up an April Fool's joke. So that's my report. Yesterday I was kind of waffly about it. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. He QA for the events team. Did I lose Yintan? Uh-oh. Yintan? Did I use the... You guys are here, right? Oh, no.
I am here. Let me unmute the stream.
Oh, Yintan's Android broke. Well. Didn't work. Can I turn it off and on again? Hold on. Oh. Uh-oh. You think that Yintan is just very skilled? Wouldn't that be the awesome troll? Just like in the middle of talking, just like freeze up and just stop moving? That'd be great. I really hope they announce cat ears on April Fool's Day, but actually release them. You know, it's funny. I do unironically want them to come out with cat ears. I just don't know what would happen, right? Like... just as a cosmetic, just like another hat. You could even make a cheeky joke about it. I don't either. They could definitely get away with it. Tail. And for the record, when we say cat ears, this is a euphemism. It's a rallying call. You know, so you know, dog ears, wolf ears, fangs, snake eyes, whatever. Yeah. No, and before furry Ash. Honestly, it's more for me about the fact that like this is everybody's going to of course like respond, but like it is a lore thing, right? Like it's built into the Galente, like it's in. They have it written in that they do these extreme body modifications, and then they don't let us have it. It feels weird, right? Like that you used to not have Mimitar tattoos, and people thought that that was weird, and they eventually brought it in. You know, Caldari. I used to complain that the Caldari didn't have gambling, but now they have the Hypernet. how can somebody gank me if I don't show my location? ISD Thalic. If I have to explain to you how location agents work, I just don't know what to tell you, man. If you're really good, you can figure out the region I was in just by the skybox. You don't have access to locator agents. Give me a break.
Hi, Asherothi. Sorry about that. I promise I didn't rage quit because you outdebated me there. My power just went out.
Your power went out. Oh my.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it was just brief.
Let me see if I can get your camera going again. Is your camera working? Or are you dead again? All right, then. We'll try again in a little bit. Wait, is ISD that? Oh, I see. So, ISD Thalic, if you are on your ISD character, something tells me you won't need a locator agent to locate me. Also, I heard about you guys streaming the destruction of my Pocos and my wormhole over the weekend. Thanks, CCP. Probably something like that. Thanks for joining us down the rabbit hole, which is EVE Online Star Citizen. What's up?
He dropped again.
Oh, yeah. I caught him. I caught that.
Alright, this is getting obnoxious.
Yay!
That wasn't a power cut. I have no idea what happened there.
That was you just not liking me. I understand.
Yeah, actually, that's that, yeah. I will keep my video off just in case that's what's doing it here.
Okay, that's fine.
The point that I wanted to make, sorry, I don't know where I got cut off, so I'll just sort of go over it again, is that the only power that CSM really has is to influence the community. The community is the only thing that can actually change CCP's decision arc. What will make CCP's decision arc change is basically bad press or a reaction that indicates that the pragmatic results that they want, e.g. them making money out of this, and it having a good effect overall on their player retention and their projected profits and all that sort of thing, doesn't happen. And the only people who can ensure that are you, the individuals, as a collective. So, you know, if you don't like this change, tell CCP you don't like this change and act as if you don't like this change, otherwise they will keep moving in this direction. All you can do as the CSM is just channel that. That's the only power you have on the CSM, really. You don't get to vote on changes. You don't get to make decisions. All you are is basically a union representative for the player base.
Right. What did you think about the open letter?
I think that was great. There's a reason I signed on to it. You know, maybe there are a few of the points I would have worded differently, and maybe I'd have been a bit more aggressive towards CCP, but that's just generally my tact as a person. I think it was well written, and I think it addressed most of the main problems that most people have with it. I don't know if the call of action could have been any stronger feasibly. I wish there was something more direct that could have been like tacked onto the end to be like, hey, if you don't like this, here's what you should do.
Call to action.
Yeah, something to direct the energy that was produced by it, because you know it got a lot of attention, it got a lot of traction, but I didn't see any articles about it. I didn't see any videos pop up on my YouTube about it. I didn't see any. Well, I saw a lot of tweets, but that's because I follow everyone in the EVE community. I didn't see any from any mainstream sources, and without that, it basically has zero impact.
Well, I know that there was a big chat about it on Talking in Stations. I think that it got folded into the larger discussion because it came out so fast after. By the time the news of the Retriever sale came out, that that open letter was out. So it just was part of the retriever conversation.
Yeah, and I think that that level of reactivity is good. But yeah, that would be my general point. Is just that you don't have that much power to do anything. I don't think there's much more that the CSM can do than release an open letter like that and hope that people pick it up. Because whilst talking in stations is good and is important, that's a method of media that predominantly broadcasts to enfranchised players who are likely to remain enfranchised. CCP does not. It's not to say that they don't care. That is the wrong way to talk about it, and I don't want to give that impression, because CCP does, both as a company and the individual developers. That's another thing that I really don't like about these sorts of conversations, is that you end up conflating CCP, how it moves as an organization, and the individuals that make up CCP.
Right, they're not a monolith.
When you say that CCP is bad, you're not saying this individual, every individual CCP employee is an evil bastard out to exploit the players and all that, because the majority of them are not like that, and they don't have that in mind. They want to make a good game, and they want to work on the game they love, and I can't help but appreciate that.
Yeah, and furthermore, they also, like, whenever you think, oh, CCP wants this, CCP likes this, CCP thinks this way, there's large amounts of factioning within CCP. For any given thing that there are players, like, that the players debate, I guarantee you that there are factions within CCP that are on both sides of that fence. And that's true about almost anything. And that's not a bad thing, by the way.
No, it's a healthy diversity of opinion sometimes. Sometimes there isn't a healthy diversity of opinion, though, and that tends to be where the CSM kind of picks in. We try and be the other voice in the room. That's right. Kind of the other role of it.
Well, the other problem is that, like... Sorry.
Admittedly, that hasn't always been the case. You do always miss things. You'll never cover every aspect of EVE in any given CSM.
Right. Well, so the other thing is that, like, as developers have a different goal than the players do, if that makes sense. Like, they have a totally different perspective and different goals for themselves and for the game and all that sort of stuff. So often people's, like, the players' opinion about how something should be and CCP's can differ. And the CSM is meant to be there to help kind of massage the difference, right? They stand in the threshold where CCP can show them a little bit of like what's going on and the why of it all. And the players, but they're still players, and therefore are coming from within the trenches. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think that's kind of an accurate way to put it. My general way of thinking of it still is like, you are the union representative of the player base. You are there to represent the wants and needs of the player base, and when CCP tries to do stuff to the player base, which is for their gain, you have to try and make sure that you get something in return out of it. Like, there has to be, you're there to negotiate that, like, hey, if you're going to do this sort of thing, can we make sure that doesn't happen, or can we make sure that we at least get some balance changes put in, because that'll help people accept you doing this sort of thing.
Ultimately, you're a signal boost, right?
Yeah. It's there's no votes or anything. There's no like CCP telling you we think we're going to do this. What's your input? Like 99% of the time, you do not get to suggest changes. The CCP tells you, here's what the changes are. What do you think of them? And you have to kind of point out the problems, point out what's important to message, and kind of help be that intermediary. But equally, sometimes when things get really, really bad, you have to just stand up and be like, this isn't acceptable. If you decide to go forwards with this, I will quit the CSM and tell the public, and you guys are just going to have to deal with that. Which is why I no longer am on the CSM.
Fair enough. When is your NDA over again? I'll mark it on my calendar.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. But yeah, in general, though, I think I am positive. Like, I didn't think the community would react quite as strongly. I thought it would be more divided on this point, in terms of being for or against the retriever. And that's probably the one big positive to take out of this, is that people generally seem to be against it and willing to vote with both their feet, their voice, and I'm hoping their wallet. We will never really know as people outside of things, but they voted with the NFTs. What was that, $250 or something worth of exchange traded on the exchange value traded? I don't expect that to increase a huge amount. That's the sort of thing you got to do to make CCP reconsider their decisions.
Right. Well, so the thing is, though, is that yesterday they all but doubled down on the whole thing, right? Like, or was it yesterday or was it the day before? Either way, like,
They put it on sale.
This happened over the weekend. And so, my thought was, well, I wonder if CCP has been able to even react to the outrage per se. There's a possibility that a relatively new marketing person didn't understand the threshold that they were stepping over, that they didn't understand the difference between this and the other thing or whatever. But yeah, they put it on sale specifically when the mining was over. Might have been set up already ahead of time to have that happen. But that seemed to rile up everybody over again.
Yeah, I didn't actually catch that second wave. That didn't kind of pop up strongly enough to really hit my radar. But wow, that's really bad. Like, the fact that you're making a conscious decision to then highlight this indicates that that's the direction you really want to go. So
right. So now apparently when you get to the mining section of the MPE, it now gives you a deal to buy the retriever for $18.
Yeah, I don't like that, but I've got to hope that they see this backlash and they act accordingly. Really, have we had any sort of official response from CCP on it? Yeah.
I just told you the official response.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Well, I mean, might go to the CCP keynote and just walk out. Point at me at some point. That'd be fun.
It's going to be interesting. So here's my controversial take that I put on Twitter, which is that I am of the firm opinion that asset safety for super capitals was more destructive, damaging, and changing to the game than selling retrievers for cash. Or selling skill points.
I think that's a tough call to make as to which. It depends. How can you quantify the levels of damage there?
Titan caches exist now. They didn't before. And if they didn't, at least if they didn't have asset safety, then if you burned all their structures without them being able to get their Titans out, their Titans would either drop or be destroyed.
Would have existed without the asset safety.
Say again?
Titan caches would exist without asset safety as long as you could dock them.
Right, but then you could at least destroy them. You could destroy an entire Titan cache at a time. That would be amazing. Now they just asset safety.
I mean, yeah.
And now we have Titans in stations when they're not really supposed to be. We have Titans on the hypernet when they shouldn't be.
Oh, because they get in stations, so you can...
It bugs the crap out of me. And it changed the nature of the game, and it changed how much power can be accumulated.
I would say that there are things that are more damaging to... I think that the rock core setup that allowed those to exist was the most damaging part of it. If we had like the pre-rock core economy, Titan caches and super capital asset safety would not be a huge problem, because the actual cost of, like the what was it? Oh, the Judgment Day. What was the actual Citadel that got flipped there? I don't think it was MTACO. It was the Keep Star for CO2. It was M2. I think it was M2,
I'm not the null guy. You're the null guy.
Yeah, that one. Someone in the chat will correct me at some point.
Absolutely.
In that, they effectively lost access to a super capital fleet for 60 days. And that is effectively not having a super capital fleet. That is how you destroy a super capital fleet in the modern day, and how you would destroy a Titan cache. You would have to either have someone betray them, or you would have to have them hell camped for 2 weeks. And I see that as more of a problem of Citadel mechanics than it is even the asset safety mechanics.
Right.
Like,
Well, we're already 3 steps down the road. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
My point is that
like,
if you're going to concede to the fact that supers can dock in these keep stars because they're super cool,
yeah.
then at least it's like, no, everybody put your supers there. It'll be fine. Trust me. Boom. Like, you know what I mean? Like the fact that the thing about the roll call is I really like that argument because I think that you're right as far as like raw impact goes. But the thing that the difference is that the other 2 examples or all of the other examples are violations of the rules. The roll call doesn't violate any rules. It's just way out of balance. Right. In the same way as selling SP, selling Retriever's Cache, or asset safety for supers.
Yeah, I do agree that asset safety fundamentally is bad for the game. I do not like it. It was generally just intended to be a way to stop people from getting fucked over when they quit the game for a period of time.
Yeah.
But I think we've generally come to just accept that isn't, like, people don't have all their life in a nullsec station anymore because they've experienced being evicted now, because that's a thing that just happens a little more regularly in nullsec. Well, no, sorry, not more regularly in nullsec, but people who play in smaller alliances have experienced it more, and people in larger alliances just don't get evicted.
That's fair enough.
But yeah, basically my argument would have been that, yeah, the asset safety is probably worse for the game as a feature that is now developed, but that is the result of multiple, decision points stacking on top of one another, whereas this is a singular decision point.
Right.
And is much more, easily reversible. You can't turn off the fact that Titan caches exist. There is not a way to say we are going to undo this change without.
They can just remove asset safety from super capitals.
That's probably what's going to happen.
And then just
doing that is
let it play out.
Yeah, and maybe the CCP that did Blackout probably would have done that. I would have much preferred if they'd have turned off asset safety rather than turning off local.
Oh my god. Bloodshed. Bloodshed. People would be in a rush to kill each. Oh my god. Oh, now I liked Blackout until just this moment. That would have been so amazing. No.
No. What about all the people who were gone though?
Nullsec, only in Nullsec.
Yeah, but they've been gone for 3 years. They're planning on coming back.
Look, man, I will tell you this right now. When I moved to Nullsec, I went camping for a weekend and came back to all my stuff being gone. So, and that was in 2011. Get wrecked. So.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Wormholes now, so basically my view on Nullsec is no longer valid. Wormhole or BTW.
Yeah, I guess my point is that like so. It's like a plaid, right? Like you've got 2 gray stripes. The one gray stripe is super capitals being able to dock. The other gray stripe is asset safety. So they're both kind of bad, but where they cross is poison.
Yes, very accurate.
All right. Well, I've made all my points. Thanks for coming. No.
I mean, it's a complicated issue. I think there's a lot of things that can be done in this high level. Like the high level of EVE Online strategic balancing is insane because we're working in a player deflationary environment. So, there aren't as many new alliances popping up because there's not populations of new players naturally bubbling up through the surface of EVE Online as much as there were in the past.
Is that the case, or is it again because can new alliances pop up in a world in which these old alliances exist?
Yeah, there's also the entrenched power problem. That is also another part of it.
Is there air in the room, as it were?
I was able to take Solve with 20 dudes back when I was a Nullsec FC, and that was great.
You're
fun.
not a new. You just said new.
I was flying predominantly with newer players. A lot of my
okay.
dudes could only fly caracals, and it was
Fair
fun.
Enough.
We survived out there for a little bit, and eventually we got we kind of disbanded from political reasons more than anything. But yeah, the Citadel stuff is also a problem. There is not enough strategic requirement to. I had a really good way of phrasing this that I talked about before. Basically, the rewards for strategic agility in EVE have gone down significantly. So new players don't have as much of an advantage by being able to kind of focus on one very small thing and doing it well, and kind of moving around and finding the weak spots, that's not as much of a thing anymore because the timers have all elongated. You've got Citadels that are now on minimum, 5-day timers, versus when I was coming through the game, you had 36-hour pause timers, you had 8-hour SBU timers. That sort of thing makes the game much less casual friendly, admittedly,
Right.
and it makes a system where you are dependent on large organizations to function, but it also means that strategic agility on the attack is more important, and that allows people to have the pipeline of we're just going there to make content to, oh god, these guys are really easy to beat, let's just take a system, to your entire alliance fail cascades.
Right.
Which is kind of like the way I see Eve is functioning. Like you need these small little hyenas pecking at the big animal and
testing for weaknesses.
Testing for weaknesses, and without having easy bits at the edges of your territory to pick at, there is no niche for that, for those groups, for those new. And I think that's part of why Nullsec has been so stagnant for a long time.
Well, CCP could just have the drifters do it.
No, please do not do that again. No, I don't think you were around for that period, but like,
I was.
That shit was awful. That shit was so
I was on
unfun.
Null, but I was. Yeah, it was.
If it had actually been interesting gameplay, maybe I would have been okay with it. But
right.
Man, please do not make me pilot Citadel guns for fucking 3 hours a day.
No, not mechanically the same, conceptually the same. And iterate on the concept.
Yeah.
Are you excited for Fanfest?
I am. Of course, I'm excited for Fanfest, man. Like, I haven't bought a ticket to the event yet. I will be honest about that. But I have my flights booked. I have my hotel booked. I can't wait to be there.
Any speculation?
On what's going to be announced?
Yeah.
No, it's going to be nice. I'm going to go there and I'm going to be fucking surprised by whatever they tell me. I haven't experienced that in so long.
Fair enough.
I knew 3 years of roadmap when I left, so I knew roughly what was going until CSM 15. We're now basically at the end of that, and so I have no idea what the fuck they're going to announce at this point. It's great.
Fair enough. That makes sense. I do. Shoot, we were just talking about something, and I wanted to circle back on
it. Big empires, Nullsec stagnation. Strategic agility.
Yeah, so the smaller group thing. I think that the smaller group or the newer group thing is possible now, but it seems to be that you have to be much more on the bleeding edge, right? Doing the Triglavian stuff, getting involved in events, following the metaliminal storms. Like, agility comes from staying on top of whatever the current thing is and maximizing it.
Oh, yeah, I think that there's definitely stuff like that. It's more that that has to be, like, there's no emergent version of that. That's kind of the issue. There's no natural waxing and waning of power within empires that can be exploited by other players. It feels like the rhythm of...
Well, what I'm saying is that I just think that that's not happening in Null right now. It's happening in places like Highsec and Pochvin and other places like that.
Yeah, Pochvin stuff is really fun. That is like the one thing I'm kind of sad I can't go and take part in. I just see all these battle reports, and they're like, "Oh, this looks like a fleet I would have," because I just don't have the time. I just don't have the time to sit down and learn the mechanics and get involved in it.
I mean, just
maybe I will one day. But...
grab a cruiser, use a filament, and learn.
And Thalak, you are absolutely correct. I don't know why I owe you a beer, but I'll buy anyone a beer at FanFest. Oh god, I'm going to get swarmed by people who are going to ask me to buy beer now, aren't I? Oh well. Worst ways to meet people.
Yeah, clip it. Quick, clip it. Yeah. Oh god.
Sounds about right, Alec. Anyway.
They're calling you out, man. What?
Anyway, man, I am going to have to dip off here and start making dinner, but it's been really great talking to you. I'm sorry I'm not quite as slick as a public speaker as I used to.
Before you go, though, are you running for CSM this year?
I'm not running for CSM this year. I don't, if I don't have time to play you 40 hours a week, why would I be on the CSM, That's another 30 hours. From my perspective, I feel like if you can't spend at least 20 hours a week on the CSM, you aren't really doing your job as a CSM member. You should be answering emails from your constituents. You should be kind of discussing things with devs regularly. That's what you're there to do. If you're not willing to do it, why did you run in the first place?
Good point. Parting advice to either anybody who does want to run for CSM or just EVE players in general.
If you're going to run for the CSM, first of all, consider your decision wisely. And I don't mean that to say don't do it. I did release an article like a while back, so it was like why you shouldn't run for the CSM. But I also wrote one which was why you should run for the CSM, and it's try and have your impact during the campaign season. You know, don't aim to win the CSM. Aim to make the conversation be about whatever part of the game you believe needs the most attention. Because if you can control the conversation towards that direction, it will force other candidates to talk about it. And if you don't think that CCP sees things like that, you're wrong. They do. The problem is that, you know, I would love to say that I'd worked for faction warfare, but it just hasn't. That's kind of the only problem. Because I feel like they get brought up every single year in every single campaign season, and then nothing happens.
I think that's just the big beast that nobody knows what to do with. Like,
yeah,
that's the problem. That's too big to solve for a lot of iterations.
Yeah, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of candidates that don't win, and you're probably going to be one of them. That's the harsh truth of things. So try and make sure that you're controlling the conversation and getting your points across to CCP during the campaign.
Well, best of luck to you at the Anger Games. You should definitely drop by as we get closer to it.
Yeah, I will. I'll let you know. I believe the open practices start this weekend, so we should be starting to see a few more teams get some publicity and start to see the meta of the whole event take shape, which is going to be great. Although
excellent.
I have my fears about what it will take shape as.
I think I want to have you come on just to talk a little bit about that, right? Like to prep our people, anybody who's just getting into it, who might be interested in then going and watching it, you know, what kind of things do they might need to know or think about ahead of time. So come back and we'll do that. When is the Anger Games? Star Citizen.
The Anger Games is in May. I believe it is I believe it's the week after FanFest it starts. And then it will go for 3 weekends from there and finish up in the first weekend of August. It's a great tournament. It's 7v7. It's always really interesting because it's so different from the AT. There's a lot of unique rules. There tends to be some interesting composition ones, especially in this case, because it's built around basically making it so that bringing more than one of any ship is penalized. So you're going to see some absolutely weird, wonderful ships that you don't regularly see. I've already seen a stabber, a regular T1 stabber in one of my scrims.
All right then.
Yeah, that's all I gotta say. I look forward to things, and hey, maybe one day we'll collaborate again on some videos. I think that'd be fun too.
Please, if only to make it so people watch it.
Aww.
I'm kidding. You have a good one though. Like you're well known and well beloved within the community for a reason. Have a good one.
You too, and keep up the great work, Astrophy.